He's the president of the SFU Sports Analytics Club and will be presenting alongside with other members of the club, including Matthew, Lucas, and Kristen. Matthew is a senior student at SFU obsessed with optimization and prediction, specifically in the realm of sports. Lucas works at the Big Data Hub lab at SFU, designing tools for NCAA basketball and performing research in other sports. While Kristen is a fourth-year undergrad stats student, is a co-president of the Stats and Actuarial Science Student Association at SFU. So welcome.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Today we're going to be talking to you about evaluating the power play regroup decision in the American Hockey League. So first we're going to start out by introducing our team, connecting names to faces. So my name is Kristen, this is Danny, Lucas, Matthew. Here are our names, read them, memorize them, hire them. So we are all Sports Analytics Club members. And we're gonna tell you a little bit what we're gonna do today. So we're gonna start off talking about kind of the unique start that our team had. While we've known each other for a while, our research really incepted at the data sprint that took place in November. And then we kicked off from there. And then we're gonna give a couple of acknowledgements, lay some foundation, give you some background on the data, couple of definitions, building blocks, and then really give you the meat of our presentation, which is the key results. So our team started out working on our research at the data sprint that took place, actually at La Casita restaurant, which is where the social will be happening later today, so I can endorse the tacos. And when we first started out, we had a 6-hour period to do some exploratory data analysis. We really focused on doing some player network visualizations and just like definitions and sort of introductory metrics on the power play. And then after we took first place, we got a more complete data set from Hockey Data, and we got the pleasure of doing some more analysis and came up with some pretty cool stuff that we want to show you. So before we get into jumping right in, I'd like to do some acknowledgements. So definitely Hockey Data for giving us the data. It was wonderful to work with. It had a lot of variables for us, so we really we could do anything we wanted, which was great. Sarah Bailey was another team member from our initial hackathon, so we just want to give her acknowledgement. Fortunately, she has graduated and is now working as a sports analyst for the LA Rams. And then we also want to give an acknowledgement to Eric Parnas. We read his research paper, and it was a big inspiration for us. And then Josh, who's been a good mentor to our team and has really encouraged us. He wears many hats, as you can read about on the slide. And then also a thanks to waronice.com and Sam Ventura, who I believe might be here today. Yeah, in the back.
Because we use his plotting code.
Yeah, because we use his plotting code, and it was great.
Okay, so as everyone knows, the data has been a challenge for like every data scientist or like data analyst. And we're very fortunate to have this data set from Hockey Data. And we know there are so many variables that will allow us to build our analysis. And as Gary mentioned a couple of times, so this is not a sales pitch.
we're going to do it for him.
So now I'm going to talk about our data set. So we have about 200 games for the NHL between 2016 and 2017. And we have a number of tagged events, including zone entries and zone exits. These two variables are actually the cornerstone of our analysis in this talk. And we study over 1,000 unique 5-on-4 power plays from minor penalties. As we know, a hockey game can be broken down into even strength versus power play. And then I don't think I need to say a lot about the difference between these two things to this audience. So I just want to highlight a few things. So we know that when teams are playing at even strength, so there's not really time limit other than game time, I suppose. But when teams are playing during a power play, so we know there's a limited time for the power play, and we want to maximize the time we spend in the offense zone. And we also because we also know that when teams are playing during power play, the offense team has more control over of the play, and then they can have a more structured offense. So those points leading to us to why we want to study the power play. So we want to focus on, want to study deeply on what we can learn about the structural elements from the power play. For example, can specific breaking structure lead to a better performance? And we also want to maximize the time spent for the power play. And another interesting question will be, is a longer and controlled breakout is better than a shorter but risky breakout, or is it the other way around? And then Matthew and Danny will introduce us some interesting results.
So what we want to look into is what a neutral zone regroup could be. And we're really looking at a decision item so that we can hopefully give some sort of actionable detail towards the end of our presentation. So when we look at a neutral zone regroup, it's when the power play team receives the puck in the neutral zone and they have to decide, do we take the puck back to our zone and regroup, take a longer approach, and then try and get into the zone? Or from that position, do we push it back into the zone immediately and try and generate offense as quick as possible? So this is an example of what an immediate zone of re-entry would look like. We see Tampa Bay grabbing the puck at neutral zone and catching the New York Rangers on a quick bench change. They try and push it into the zone immediately, hopefully generating an even bigger advantage than they normally experience on the power play. In terms of what our data actually shows, we have tagged events. So we see passes, we see zone entries, we see whether it's a skate or chip, a dump, and a few other details. So for what we actually see in the data, this is more what that play would look like. We get the puck at center, it would say puck recovery, then we make a pass, and we have a zone entry, and then the play continues. So this would be the extent of our breakout and the start of the offensive zone opportunity. So with the benefits, the idea of an immediate breakout is that it's quicker, you can catch a team off guard, and you get a bit more of an advantage on that power play when you could catch someone coming off the bench. It's almost like a 5-on-3 for a few moments if you do it right. But the challenge is that it's not as structured as the rest of the power play is, and that this little breakdown can lead to a slightly higher chance of failing the zone entries and a longer regroup. For a full regroup, it's the idea of getting the puck in neutral zone and choosing to take it back into your zone, allowing your team possibly to make a line change or to get a better setup so that you can re-push into the zone with more momentum and with a better structure. So again, the idea is that this returns to the structured nature of the power play, in which we have a better approach and a more well-refined attack. But the challenge is that it's also time-consuming and that we can still fail on these zone entries. It's not a guaranteed success. So the way that we are going to evaluate neutral zone regroups is we're going to have two definitions. So a neutral zone regroup for our data will start when we have a previous event that was in the offensive zone and the next action in our data set occurs in the neutral zone for the power play team. And another definition that we'll use to help us understand neutral zone regroups is when there was a play instrumented by the shorthanded team in the neutral zone, and the next play is with the power play team controlling the action in the neutral zone as well, meaning that the power play team now has the puck in the neutral zone. So with our immediate and full regroup definitions, we see a zone entry event attempt or offensive zone event before we see an event by the power play team in the defensive zone. So that's the idea that when Tampa Bay got the puck in the neutral zone, they pushed in immediately before they ended up regrouping behind their own blue line. And then the full regroup is when we do actually see the teams taking the puck back into the zone, whether it's behind their blue line or behind the net, possibly getting that line change or taking a chance to slow the game down. So when we want to look at this, we're looking at time primarily, because we want to understand with the fixed amount of time we have on a power play, how can we make the most of it? So in general, we have a bit of an expectation as to how long each of these events should take. In the regrouping attempts, whether it's immediate or a full regroup, we have the puck recovery to our initial attempt at entering the zone. Whether the attempt is successful or not is the next part of the analysis, but at the start we have that first push for the zone entry, and the immediate regroup, because of the shorter distance, takes a shorter amount of time on average to approach the zone entry. The next part in red is our expected time to successful zone entry, and this is because you'll see that sometimes you have a higher chance of failure on certain types of zone entries, and for that reason we'll see that the immediate group looks to be a larger group. So this time between the successful zone entry and the initial zone entry is 0 on a success and much larger on a failure as you're forced to regroup, whether it's to the neutral zone or all the way back to your side of the ice. And then finally we have the offensive zone time that we spend, and at the end we have the cumulative time of our breakout decision to the amount of offense we generated, and this whole chain of events has a time associated with it.
Okay, so what do we get here? So we use the expected time to analyze how much time the given decision takes. And so we can see, given a metric, whether it's shot attempts, shots on goal, goals, unblocked shot attempts, how many of those things we get per minute of power play time after a regroup decision. So after we decide to do an immediate regroup, we expect to see about 2 unblocked shot attempts compared to 1 unblocked shot attempt if we were to do a full regroup, and that's per minute of power play time after the regroup. So we can see that in every single case here that we have immediate regroups are more effective use of the time we have on the power play. And so we did a little bit of a reproducibility study, so we grabbed for every one of our breakouts, or every one of our neutral zone regroups, we grabbed the odd ones and the even ones, and we did the same thing, and we can see that we get the same types of results. We then move this to a team level. So we have smaller sample sizes here, so we don't want to make too many claims about each team, but overall we want to see that our methodology still worked out at a team level. So there's about 30 of these decisions for each team. And you can see St. John's and the Hershey Bears have a couple metrics in which the metric switches the other way, but we would say that this comes down to small sample sizes, and that overall we can see that the trend continues across teams. Okay, and this is a little bit of a validation for us. So we see that when we go to a full regroup, when we bring the puck back into our defensive zone, we might get a shift change, and we gain momentum going into the offensive zone. We skated in at a much higher rate than a immediate breakout. Whereas immediate breakouts, then we might face a little bit more pressure, we might not have an open lane, and so we are forced to chip it in a little bit more. You'll also notice that our percentages don't add up to 100. This is because in our data there's sometimes where the puck enters the zone without an actual label, and so it's an unlabeled and we're not really sure how it got there, so that's the reason why it doesn't add up to 100, but overall we get more skate-ins from full attempts, but even though we get more controlled entries, the time it takes to get that controlled entry might not actually be worth it. So here we can see the times that we computed for each decision. So an immediate re-entry attempt, the expected time to enter the zone is 2.77 seconds. The average time to enter the zone for a full regroup attempt is 10.26 seconds. So we gain 8 extra seconds. And something we're saying here is that you can see in the failure area, we expect to fail a little bit more often in the immediate re-entry attempts, but the amount of times that we fail doesn't, and the extra time that takes to go get the puck and re-enter the zone doesn't cost us as much as all the advantages we gain from entering the zone earlier. So immediate zone regroups, or immediate zone re-entries, fail at a higher rate, but it doesn't cost us as much as we think it does. Giving the other team the puck, pressuring them and having them shoot it down the ice doesn't take as much time as we think it does. And so we're saying that we should be trying to go in more often, create more pressure, even if we fail at a higher rate, because the time doesn't cost us as much. And we can see that in the above chart. It takes us 73% less time, or sorry, we gain 73% more time using a immediate zone entry, and we lose about 12% of our offensive zone time, which as you can see is 10.69 seconds to 10.26 seconds, so we're really not losing all that much expected offensive zone time by changing metrics, and the time we gain going in right away is substantial. Okay, so what are our takeaways? Like I said, it's not as risky as we think. Right, failing, even if we give the puck to the shorthanded team, we know we can pressure them, make them shoot it down the ice, go get it. We would have already had to spend that time on a full regroup to go get it. Okay, now our biggest conclusion is to look to be more aggressive. We think that hockey players are pretty smart. We think coaches know what they're doing. We're not saying to go in every single time. We understand there's situations where you're going to want to change. There's situations where you don't have a good opportunity to go in. Sometimes we'll have to be clearing the zone before we go in so we're not offside. So there's a bunch of different issues and different reasons why you'd want to go for a full regroup. We're not saying it's totally bad, but we're saying on the margin, if you can look to be more aggressive, you can look to enter the zone more often, immediately you'll put more pressure on, and failing is not as bad as you think because you would have had to go waste that time anyways. Finally, we also think that it can come down to a team level. So we would be interested in seeing which players and which power play units create good chances off of a full rush rather than an immediate rush. So maybe if you have a good power play defenseman, or you have an Eric Carlson on your team who can make long stretch passes, maybe he'll enter the zone quicker off of a full regroup. Right? There's different opportunities here, and we're not saying we're just saying in general look to be more aggressive. Okay, so limitations of our work. It was really hard to come up with clear data definitions that accurately described what we wanted. Due to the nature of tag data, we lose the flow of the puck for 3 seconds on average between events. And even more so, we lose where everyone else on the ice is. So we can't tell if there's people still trapped in the offensive zone. We can't tell if people are in the midst of a change. So getting these data definitions really clear is something we're still working on improving, but something we're pretty happy with for the moment. And tag data, I mean, we're very grateful, but until we can get precise XY coordinates for all the players on the ice, there is inherent missingness in terms of where the players appear when we get to see them. Finally, our future work, we'd like to gather more data for more reliable estimates. Neutral zone regroups don't happen all that often. They happen about once every 3 power plays. And so the more data and the more data from the AHL or from the NHL that we can gather to support these decisions would be great. We'd love to apply this methodology to the NHL. We're not sure whether this would apply from AHL to NHL, whether it's just an AHL thing, or if we gather more data and we see new things, we've proven data definitions, and we see that our results change. So we're very open to different conclusions. We are just applying here a framework to evaluate the decision. The last thing there, or the middle thing there actually, that I really like is shift change prevented, and we have a little bit of data that could look into that, but to see if we prevented changes or if we punished if we punished the shorthanded team changing when we went for an immediate zone reentry. I think that's about it. So you can find us on the emails there. You can find me on Twitter, and we'd like to open up to questions.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
If you have questions, put up your hand, I'll bring you the mic. Start with you guys back there.
Is there a possibility that the increased number of shots, goals, those events off of immediate zone reentries are because those entries are attempted when the possibility of increased shots is there?
Yeah, so that's something I wanted to say is we believe that players are pretty smart. They're going to go when there's an opportunity. But we also think that players might be risk averse in the sense that if you're trying to enter the zone and you fail and you give the other team the puck, well, your coach might get mad at you, right? And so our outcome is that that's not as bad as we think it is. The time it takes for us to go pressure the team, for them to clear it back down the ice, for us to get the puck, that time is not worse, and is not worse than the amount of time that we take to go do that ourselves. And that's the big outcome. We think players are pretty smart, and so Yeah. That's it.
More questions?
Right here. It's fine, we got 3.
Because you're changing in the neutral zone, did you find any impact of shorthanded goals?
That's not something we have actually looked into at all yet. That's a good point. If we're failing more often and entering the zone and giving them the puck, we might be giving them more opportunity. The thought is that if we're trying to enter the zone and we've given up the puck, then we probably have everyone outside of the zone. And so that might not be as important, but it is something that we can definitely look into for sure.
Yeah, 'cause it didn't appear that way on the videos that you used to show either.
Sorry?
It didn't appear that the video that you used to show the examples, that those people were outside or in the.
Oh yeah. No, they were going to regroup.
Yeah.
No, definitely something to look into, but not something we focused on.
Following up on your comment about players being pretty smart about this, did you find that the players who were on the ice attempting the faster turnarounds more frequently were more successful? Like, were they the better ones at it?
The data was just, because this situation doesn't happen enough and we don't have a full season of data and a bunch of factors, I mean, it's easy to blame small data, but it comes down to that. We would love to look into that more, and we think it'd be really interesting to see different power play units and their tendencies. Again, if you're a good player, you might be able to try this more often because you might be more successful. You might have a little bit more leeway with the coach, but again, not something we could really get into, hopefully, in the future.
I know the sample size was small, but was there a particular team that was very good at zone entries in the power play?
Go back to that slide. So Toronto out here.
Real good pros.
Nice. I see why you asked that question, and it's something that when we were just looking at general statistics about the power play, Toronto, I believe, was either number 1 or 2 in power play efficiency and a whole bunch of other metrics on the power play, and so it's good to see that they're doing well in their immediate entries.
It's about time.
Yeah.
So I know you clearly didn't have NHL data, but you've obviously done a lot of study on this. What is your intuition about how this would generalize to the higher skill of the NHL?
I think it still would apply. Generally, I would love to check it with data instead of relying on myself. But I think just the fact that the same thing I've said a bunch of times here, like, it's not as bad as you think. Maybe the shorthanded team is more skilled and maybe they can avoid us for longer, maybe it takes longer for them to ice the puck, maybe that's the case. But if we have more skilled players, giving them the opportunity to take more risks and try to create something and maintain pressure is something that we suggest. Yeah.
Any others?
Did you look at total time spent in the ozone after the entry for each type, or was that something that you didn't?
Yeah, so if you go back to the timeline, oh sorry, no, keep going forward. Actually go one more. Yeah, so you can see in this table here, offensive zone entries, or offensive zone time generated from full breakouts and immediate breakouts. Oh, sorry, I quoted the wrong numbers earlier in the presentation. It's 10.69 to 9.37 is a mistake I made. So it's 9.37 seconds of offensive zone time for immediate entries on average, and 10.69 seconds of offensive zone time from a full breakout is what we expect. And so it's a little bit different there, but like we said, the time we gain, the expected time gained on the regroup is just far outweighs it.
All right, I'm gonna say thank you very much, first of all. And then, we're gonna take a break now for about 10 minutes, get lightning talks up.